Cool. Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Hi. Hi,
How's it
guys.
going?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm getting used to the arcade sounds again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah.
I'm curious how much of the joust that's right over Nick's shoulder is coming through. It's a pretty loud one too.
Yeah. And it's got such a distinct sound, too.
Yeah.
Like, the sound design is amazing on that game. Which, nobody appreciates sound design, but it is great.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. And Kalarik and Murphy did a great job on that. And yeah, they don't, people don't appreciate it. Everything sells the what's going on. And some of those sounds were specifically had to be really distinctive, like the pterodactyl.
The pterodactyl
so
is, like, etched into my brain.
And there was, because I'm with John was more of so he was the lead sound guy, and he took Tim Murphy under his wing. He had just started at Williams, and when I met John, I knew he was, this guy was a professional, and I told him, look, there's a bunch of sounds you need in this game. I only care about 5 of them, and of the 5, I really only care about 1, which is the wing flap. And I was telling Lonnie is that, and then he was saying, but the technology, it can't really make a wing flap. And then I said, okay, so when you accomplish that, which you're going to do, then I want you to focus on the pterodactyl, and then the rest I just left him alone because the guy was a professional, and the only comments I would have is don't make this one quite so loud or this one, but it was all are to divert people's attention when you need them diverted, and.
Yeah.
And he got all that, and so that was like something I didn't have to worry about. I just gave him a panic attack about the wing flap, and then everything else.
You saying
sorry,
that.
John, can you bring your mic a little closer? It's just a little
sorry.
low.
Is
Yep,
this
good,
better?
good, yeah.
Okay.
You saying that makes me think about something that me and Josh have discussed a lot about Killer Queen, which is that there's not a single bee in the game, and yet, like, everybody never says that they're bears or anything like that. It's always like bees, bee puns, there's a billion bee puns or whatever. And you saying that makes me think about the flap on the characters, which definitely sounds like insect wings.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, like, that's part of the brain chemistry that makes people think, like, oh yeah, they're bees. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
So yeah, one thing that we wanted to mention that, like, it was really interesting talking to you last night. How you said you started in toy design, and like that seems to us like it probably influenced your thought process, right? And like, in talking with, like, a lot of the other like early arcade designers that we've had the opportunity to meet, like, of all those people, I feel like your process is most similar to kind of how we work with, like, a lot of, like, early, like, brainstorming, like you were talking about last night, and the type, like, really focusing on the experience of the player, and, like, just the idea of play, I guess, And so that was really like, I felt like, and I think Nick did too, from when we were talking about it, like, I can see why Joust really resonated with us, in that, like, I think we all have kind of like a similar approach to, like, how we think about games, and it was but having never spoken with you before that, I didn't realize that that was so much of your process.
I couldn't catch the last part.
No, it was just interesting. Like, I didn't realize that was so much of your process. But, like, I'm curious. Like, I mean, is that? Would you agree that that's true? That like your experience with toy design, like, inspired like how you work as a game designer?
Yeah, a couple things as a toy designer, and then also just kind of as a visual person, also. But in toy design, it's like I always listed stuff, and so even like people in the arcade industry weren't making game design documents. There was not. I mean, that to me was like I didn't understand that. It's and it was. If you're doing a concept, it's like I want to at least start with what are the pillars, what are
we trying to achieve?
What are we trying to achieve? And that's where the first the write-up I did for Joust, it was very crude. And in fact, I'm even embarrassed how I explained some things early on. But the whole point of that was if you can't visualize what this thing looks like, where are you starting? And there was only one game I ever worked on in my life where we evolved from nothing. This was, it's like, okay, I want to see a start and a beginning, and here's the pillars, here's what a couple of the most important characters, and then you can evolve that.
You can iterate.
You absolutely iterate as part of the process, but iterating being the only part of a process, it's like, how are you going to get to a finish? And
right,
you know, and then the environments that I was involved in, we had schedules then too. And
yeah, what was the schedule?
Yeah, what was
Joust?
for doing For Joust, we had a 6-month schedule, but it was that was management's wishful thinking because they, they were hoping that they could get regulated schedules because everything else was we'll let you know when it's done.
Right.
You know, that people would evolve and they might pressure, management might pressure them saying, look, we got to be selling product, but, you know, like, I know vid kids would say, well, it's not ready yet. It's still not fun. And it's like, well, yeah, that's valid, but there's also, sometimes you have to have a time limit to have a business. So that's that really tough thing about if you just stick to a schedule and it's not fun, you're not doing anybody any good. But if you're also left to flounder forever, then you're not getting anything done either.
And that is a balance. I mean, like, I made my bread and butter like in the 2000s doing a lot of advert gaming, and the schedules are like short, and if you don't deliver on time, you might as well have not done anything because, like, you're doing a game for the Super Bowl. Like, if you miss the Super Bowl date, then what do you have,
Exactly.
So you have to learn how to manage your time in a way that, like, but what's nice about working on arcade games now and, like, working on our own content is we do have, like, a little bit more time to kind of, like, do deeper projects, So there is that balance,
Yeah, and I think people have more experience, or there's people that have they can schedule a little bit better, and also letting somebody know you can iterate, but in the earliest days, even before I came in, there was no point of reference. How long does it take to do this?
Right. I mean, well, you guys were inventing it,
Well, yeah. So it's like, well, you don't know how long it's going to take something. Well, now there's been decades of game development and stuff where I think it's, some people have some idea of how long does it take to do some sounds, or how long does it take to do QA, so at least you've got some common ground to be able to determine how long something's going to take, because nobody can stay in business if it takes forever and there's no end point, unless you're independently wealthy and it's your own company.
Right.
You have more freedom there, but other than that, you got to stick to some schedule.
Sure.
I'm really curious about your iteration process. 40 years ago, working on Joust, how did that work? Like now, it's easy to iterate because of the technology has changed, right? So, but like, what did it look like for you then?
Okay. Well, back then there were some unknowns. Some stuff we should have known in advance would take more iteration than it did. Other things we discovered, but then, but like we knew that getting the flying and the AI right would take time. So. And Foots played around with it a lot, and then I would go into my office and I would be playing around with, how is the flight paths of the AI in different places, and then I would play test it and I would try out if so if your sausage was here, if the transporters were, so there's some methodology of trying different things, and then I'd go back to Bill and try to communicate with him. Okay, this is what's working, here's what's not working, and then he would noodle it out, and then we'd talk back
and it's a really abstract thing, right? Like, I know that we spent a long time kind of getting the flight pattern just right, and it's like, it's hard to describe it, honestly, when it's wrong.
Yeah, totally. And I one of the first things I give as advice is learn to be honest. And, because a lot of people like to use wishful thinking, or or the manager says, I want this done by Friday, and so it'll be kind of done, and the person proudly says, okay, it's done well, then you try to go, well, no, it's not done because it's not fun. So you've got to be honest and say, look, I think we're getting there, or some of this is working, I'm having some trouble. So there has to be an environment where there's some trust, where someone can come and say, look, this isn't quite working, but I think this might help us, and then some talk back and forth to get there. But if someone tries to hide something and say this isn't fun and I know it, and it doesn't help anything.
It's true, and I mean, there has to be somebody who is really focused on the end product too, right? Like, I think that there's so much talk these days about process and like trusting the process and blah blah blah, and yeah, process is fine. It's a tool to get you somewhere, but at the end of the day, if no one has passion about what it is the thing that you're making, then like the best process in the world doesn't matter really,
Yeah, because then you're just going through the motions.
Exactly.
So you've got to. I think this is an industry where maybe it's pretty akin to movies, maybe too, where you got to love what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you don't love what you're doing, and you also you damn well better be able to take a punch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you can take your own punches, and you can take punch from other people's on the team.
Right.
But I'll tell you who's going to give you the biggest punch is when you put it out on the location
and nobody responds.
and no one responds, because that's That's as honest as it gets.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
gonna
And you
tell
have to
right
really
away.
look at that empirically and say, like, okay, this is a dud. And can I fix it? Like, because sometimes you can't fix it. Sometimes
right.
it's just not going to ever work.
And this was something where this bit me in the butt sometimes. Was like at Williams, they were keeping score, and in the toy industry, or in the toy invading thing, not quite as much. There was actually almost a formula, or we'd keep a log. Or I actually had to keep the log of. You would do so many brainstorming ideas that were worthy enough to keep the log, and of those, so let's just say 10. 4 of them were worthy to go to the next step to make a sketch on, and of those, 2 of them are worthy to make a prototype of, and so you had to be willing to, some stuff you had to trash early. You go, this isn't going anywhere, or others you'd say, well, why don't we marry this and this together, and then others were going fine. So that was part of the formula of not being afraid to try some things, learn from those, maybe adapt them. Some you kept them in the box for another day. This is a really good idea. Mm-hmm. Not for this game, but maybe for the next one. You keep.
Do you know how many times I say that? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, not for this game, but maybe for another game.
Yeah.
And I think as a designer, like one of the most frustrating, painful things that you can go through is realizing that this idea just sucks. And you're in love with it, but it sucks,
Oh, yeah. No, that hurts. Yeah. And sometimes, in the early days of Midway, like they didn't want to cut anything, so it's like you knew it sucked, but then you had to keep going with it.
Oh, that's horrible.
That was brutal. And also, then there were some cases where, and Joust 2 was a good example of it, was, look, I really didn't want to do it because I thought it was stupid making it on a vertical monitor, but I understood why they wanted to.
I know the story of this.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. Can you explain?
Yeah.
Like they gave that to you as a constraint. That it was
yeah, they couldn't sell anything, all right? And so the head of sales said, okay, I can try selling conversion kits, and most of the monitors out there that they're going to convert at the arcades and stuff are vertical. Why? Because most of them were Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man.
Interesting.
And Miss Pac-Man was a conversion originally, too.
Yeah, so their whole premise out of the sales department was, yeah, maybe we can sell some kits, but they had to be a vertical monitor. And it's okay, so let's have it be one of our titles. So first they approached VidKids,
Which, for people who don't know, VidKids was Eugene Jarvis.
Eugene Jarvis and Larry DeMar.
That's right.
And they said, well, can you do another sequel of Stargate or Robotron, but you have to do it on a vertical monitor? And they said, no, sir. We're not going to do it because it's going to fail. And so then so then it was, okay, so what was our other successful thing was Joust. And they asked me, but my attitude was like, look, I don't think it's going to work. I really don't want to do a vertical monitor, but sure, let's try it. And that's where it kind of bit me in the butt too,
right.
Where it's like, yeah, they're keeping score then, and it's like, no, I'm coming from where you're not afraid to. Sometimes you try something and then you look at it and then you go, okay, look, it's really not going to work, or it is. Continue working on it, and we'll try to do it as a kit. And it was, it wasn't. It like kind of worked, but also the premise of doing the kits is like they couldn't even sell the kits then. Nobody would even want to buy that.
I have a
So
question.
It's difficult.
I have a question for you related to what Josh was asking about iteration. Like, I know that Atari, like, there were a lot of people and they were all playing each other's games. Was that true at Williams? Like, were you like playtesting your own game, but there wasn't a lot of people, or was everybody playtesting everybody else's games?
Not so much, and there weren't a lot of games being worked on simultaneously. You know, one of the, I don't know if Atari had offices or not, where everyone had an office, but that was like a really big thing at Williams. Was all the programmers and everyone wanted their own office because they did that at the beginning. And you know, that's a nice thing to have your own privacy, but the downside of it is you lose that cross-pollination and you're not playing anyone else's game as much. I think that happened more in the 90s. People were playing each other's games more, because I remember Ed Boon would pull me out every so often and go, here, play test help me play test, and I'd play him a few games, and then if I beat him, he'd go, damn it, and then he'd change then he'd change.
I mean, I know it's a big part of our process, right? It's like knowing other game designers and like having them play our stuff and us playing their stuff. But you know, it's also a different time now, but
yeah, and people have different perspectives, and they'll spot stuff that, you know, because you're on top of it, they might see something that you don't see because you're too close to it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the wings came from Richard Lemmershon, who was the designer of the Uncharted series. And, like, we like...
You're talking about the wings on the gates.
Yeah, the wings on the gates.
Yeah, I think it's great if there's an open environment where people are playing each other's games and contributing ideas, and then if you're in charge of a particular project, it's like, okay, great, I got more ideas, and then you can decide what fits or doesn't fit.
Yeah, I mean, the decisions are always yours in the end, but
right. So ultimately, you're responsible for making some of these decisions, but it's nice to have some to choose from. And also, just the nature of brainstorming is someone might say something that sparks something in you, and maybe it didn't even have anything to do with what the person said, but it sparked something. So you need that cross-pollination.
Yeah.
So were you able to test it in arcades, or was it purely at the office that you did the play testing?
The office play testing was almost worthless.
Yeah.
Because people are, well, I don't want to say worthless, because stuff like what Noah did, especially what Bill and I were doing, were, you know, you're looking for exploits, you're looking for ways,
right.
you're looking to see what does the AI do in particular
You're too close to it.
But in terms of fun value, or is it too hard or too easy, we are too close to it. So that's when, what was nice about an arcade was, okay, the silly people were the ones that let it go to the arcade and they didn't go out and watch.
Oh, right.
Okay, that was just silly. The correct thing to do is you go there, you try to look inconspicuous, like you might play the game 2 down from the one you're doing. Yeah, but they'll spot you anyway over time.
We know the drill.
Yeah, but that's a true play test is I need to see your expressions and your body language. I pick up. I mean, if I gave somebody a form to fill out, do you like it or whatever? A lot of times they'll people please you, and they'll or if somebody has a contrary personality, depending on their Myers-Briggs makeup, is they might say something just to try to sound like a big shot or pick on something, or someone might just want to try to tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
But body language, to me, is the most
It doesn't
accurate.
lie.
It doesn't lie.
Right.
I can tell when somebody looks confused.
And
And I'm looking
yeah.
at their faces. And I can tell you this, is that when I watch someone play, I look at the reflection in the monitor. Also at people's, I want to see their expressions. I look at their hand language.
Yeah.
I look to see how long does it take them to think to whether or not they press to play again. For a long time, my definition of fun is if somebody reflexively presses to play again, then you know you've got them hooked. Okay, which is really funny because now it's like they're rediscovering that and they're calling it compulsion loops. I'm going, okay, well, we knew about that in the arcade days.
We didn't have the words for it.
We didn't have the words for it, but we knew by watching somebody that they compulsively press that button. And then now, if you read some, when you're reading about the psychology of it, is there really is a physical dopamine release.
Yeah.
When people are doing these compulsive actions, which is the feeling of the rewards. So it's the rewards, the feeling of victory. And one thing that was kind of serendipitous because but now I can see that one thing that is a strong compulsion in Joust is the transporter sound and the effect. And it was really simple when we did it at the time, but that anticipation kind of makes your
You can't
hair,
wait. You're
going, okay, the bad guys are going to come in, or I'm going to come in, and so that sound and the scene, the effect as you're transporting in is part of the anticipation compulsion loop.
Oh, cool.
And so those are things that I look at even more now than I did back then. So that was something we're looking back, I'm going, yeah, while we're doing it, wasn't that big a but now I look at that as being, yeah, that was a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Do you remember anything from the testing of Joust at the arcade? You know, that any stories from that, or what arcades did you test it at?
Well, the last one you tested at was Mother's.
Mother's, okay.
Okay, because Bill Herman had a.
It's in Chicago, right?
Yeah, and actually, it was funny because I had no idea because I moved to Chicago to work for Gordon Barlow as a toy inventor, right? And it just so happened that Mother's, my friend from college, lived in Mount Prospect, and he lived like 2 blocks away from Mother's.
Okay.
So
Cool.
it was really weird. So that's where I would hang out at Mother's.
Okay.
And that's where I played all the games, and that's also where I learned that was the important test location because I would see some of the different designers from some of the companies in the area there.
Why was that the one?
Why was Mother's?
Why was that the location? Yeah. Like, why did everybody test there?
I don't know. I know that the owner, Bill Herman, did a lot of work with doing the test reports, and it was, and that for some reason the earnings matched pretty accurately with other places in the country.
Oh, interesting.
So
Interesting.
so people could actually just witchcraft. It was like, look, if at Mother's in this location, and this location, and this location, if you see their reports, that gives you a better knowledge of how it might earn.
I've heard about this place, Mother's. I mean, what was the vibe like? Was it was it all kids, or was it like, were there a lot of adults? Or like now, like the arcades that we kind of cater to are mostly adults, especially at night, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like, what was that like back then?
A lot of teens, college, a little past college, in the 20s was the bulk of the players there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a dump. I mean, I don't want to.
As the best places are.
But it was trendy. It just.
Right.
It used to be a music shop. Originally, it was called Hotter Than Mother's Music, and it was a music shop, and it was a house, and there wasn't a straight line in the whole. You know, everything was sunken, and the floors went different directions.
Did they like serve beer or anything like that, or?
No, but it was always crowded, and that was like the hangout on Fridays and Saturdays. It was packed.
Yeah.
I mean, so that was the place to play, and it wasn't corporate, because like so Aladdin's Castle was another where they would have a chain of Aladdin's Castle arcades, but no one believed them. At least at Williams and stuff, because they were owned by Bally, and they're going, okay, well,
oh, right.
so you could be rigging your reports. You don't know that, you know. And so a lot of times it was the smaller neighborhood arcade, but it was the hangout. So it got a lot of they got a lot of traffic for those reasons, and yeah, you learn a lot just by watching people there.
Yeah. Cool. Really cool.
Yeah. I love that story.
So how about you guys when you went out?
How do what?
So when you were testing
Get a little
Queen,
closer again, actually, on your mic.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what was it like when you were testing
Oh.
Killer Queen? Because you know you really want to get a crowd there and get a lot of people trying to play multiplayer.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of depth to your game because there's different ways to win and play. And
Okay.
I mean,
So our trajectory was really different, right? Because when the first cabinet we made, it was kind of a commission for NYU. They were going to do this big show that they do every year called No Quarter, right? And I had been talking to Charles Pratt, who was at the time the curator of this thing, and I was complaining, like, we had a version of Killer Queen, but we were playing it with NES controllers, and like it was always breaking down and whatever. And I was like, I think we need to do some kind of dedicated hardware so that, like, we can kind of control the experience a little bit and whatever. And I started talking about an arcade format, and like we got on the topic of like, well, nobody pays for arcade games anymore. And I was like, you know what? I bet you if you actually made a good arcade game, people would pay for it, and blah, blah, blah. And so that's how we got into the show, right? And like, but we weren't, like, the first cabinet doesn't even have a coin door or anything, right? We were like making it because we loved the game and we wanted to show it off and we wanted to put it in front of people and whatever. So
we
weren't.
thought that was the only cabinet.
Yeah,
that
we thought
we weren't intending to produce it.
Yeah, we had no intention of making it a commercial. I mean, we had jobs as like game designers and developers, and like that was our bread and butter. This was like a hobby project, And so the show happens. It's a huge hit. We're on Polygon and, blah, 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 Kotaku, whatever. And then we got approached about, maybe turning it into a for sale kind of arcade game. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't know anything about, like, what the arcade industry looked like in 2014,
or ever really, right? Like we love arcade games. We had loved arcade games as players, but like we had never worked in, like, even though we'd made a lot of games before, we'd never made arcade games.
Right.
We had always done like downloadable games and mobile games and things
and
like
so
that.
through that night, we met this guy, Panos, and he hooked us up, and the game went to Northern California to laser tag place.
Qzar, was it called?
Q laser
Qzar, I think.
Quasar.
No,
I don't know. Something like that. Anyway, it was up in Northern California, and it was by the bathroom, and whatever. And I heard recently that Panos actually paid them to put it up front.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was doing nothing. It was literally doing nothing, and we couldn't go to California to see why it wasn't doing nothing. And so it was definitely a rough start, and then it kind of came home back to NYU. But in the meantime, we had it appeared at we made a version of it for the Museum of the Moving Image, which was doing this show about independent games. And so I remember we got to see it in action, right? See people playing it, and that confused look that you're talking about, oh, I get it. They don't understand that each arcade each cabinet, that this is not one game. They thought they were all bunching up on one side, expecting something to happen, but and just getting more and more frustrated because nothing was happening. And we're okay, and so slowly, we were able to kind of improve the UI design and figure out how to communicate to people hey, this is both cabinets are connected. They didn't understand that.
Yeah, but isn't that fascinating that sometimes it's the stuff that's you would think is brutally obvious, but it's not, because you're on top of it.
Right.
This is exactly what you're on top of, and they're gonna raise their hand about gee, I didn't know I could go over there, stand over there, or that all, So sometimes it's the most basic things.
Oh yeah.
That are the easiest to overlook, or that someone doesn't understand, and sometimes you fix those things and bang, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
So.
And then I think our equivalent of Mothers was also in Chicago, was Logan Arcade, which is newer. Was obviously not around at the same time. I think it was actually pretty new when we first went there. And the funny thing is, it was a record store first as well. It was a hardware. It's Logan Hardware is the sign outside, and it was a record store, and then it was half record store, half arcade, and then they split, and now it's all arcade. And it's a great arcade. I love it.
Yeah.
But Eugene Jarvis introduced us to the owner, Zespi, and said, you should put this game here. And I think when Eugene says try this game out, you do it, So
Right.
So he tried it, and that was the first time it was in an arcade bar, and I think and the first time it really started taking off. And partially it was because we had iterated based off of these other tests that Nick was talking about, but also I think we just realized that's the right environment for this game. Qzar, or whatever it was called, is more of a family entertainment center. It wasn't the right fit, but an older audience, alcohol, and and a blend with retro games rather than other more modern redemption games and things like that. That seemed to be the secret recipe, and and of course, and we kept observing, just like you're saying, discreetly playing the game next to it.
It became a little bit harder to be invisible, at a certain point.
Yeah, no, that stops. There's a point where they can pick you out in the crowd, but at least it's good for a couple of days, and you can get a lot of information in a couple of days.
I'll never forget Zespi said to me, or maybe it was James Barron. I think you actually know James Barron.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, and he said to me, so are you ready for the super fans? And I was just like, what does that mean? He's like, oh, you're going to find out. And like we did. It was kind of when it first hit at Logan, there were people playing for like 12 hours continuously and whatever, and we're just like, okay, this is crazy. This is just totally bananas.
I mean, last night we were talking about people playing Joust for 50 hours straight.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, Tracy was telling us that she had done a 20-hour thing, and we're like, whoa.
But she thinks she could do. Yeah, man. Yeah. So sorry, I just got distracted from the audience.
Yeah, the 50-hour. I'm going. Yeah, you just. That's flattering as hell, and then I'm going. Now I want to hug you and say, "Don't torture. Don't."
Yeah, don't kill yourself. Yeah. No, I know.
Don't kill yourself.
I know. It's like it's just a game. It's okay. Like.
Well, I love Lonnie to death, but when I hear about that he's got back problems and then he's going to do a marathon, I'm going, well, don't do that,
Yeah.
But I guess the other part is that there are some games or activities that you do that you get into a zen of it, and that's.
Do you have a game like that as as a player that really resonates with you, or that you've gotten really deep into?
Well, there's some games I've stayed away with because I would get divorced because I would be addicted and play too long. But, well, the right answer was I was a chess addict. I mean, I was.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean.
You still play?
No, but I've been tempted to pick it up again several times.
Did you? I don't really know rankings or anything, but were you ranked?
Wow, you're really putting him on the spot, Josh.
You don't have to share. This is that's why I like. It's not. I've never. I like chess, but I'm not good at it.
I was. Okay, the best way I can phrase this is I went out of my way to be unranked.
Okay.
Because I paid for my.
Oh, you were a hustler.
I paid for my. Okay, so
the truth comes out.
I'm proud of going. I'm proud of going to. I had a scholarship and a grant, and then I worked I worked during the summer at a factory job, and then in order to pay for any other expenses and stuff, I made money playing.
You were hustling chess. I love it. I love it.
Chess and backgammon, and a couple times with Monopoly.
I would have loved to see you play backgammon with my dad. He was like a freaking genius at backgammon.
But so at chess, it's like, okay, so at I was the captain of our high school team. And the funny thing was, it was in South Bend, Indiana. It's like, okay, a couple of Hoosiers. It's like, yeah, and the second guy on our chess team was Franz Lanzinger, who went to Atari and he made Crystal Castle.
Oh, really?
So independently,
another game both of us
love. Yeah, that's a great game.
Our chess team, we both got into
That's amazing.
Making video games, but then the same with college. So you're playing college competition, and then there were city games. But then, if you played a certain amount of games then you would become ranked. So then you'd have to like change your name and.
Nice.
Oh, really?
So anyway, that's the seedy side, I guess.
Cool.
But, yeah,
Cool.
no. But I love chess because it's a top. I mean, I think you can kind of see a chess influence in Joust because
I think you can.
you have because it requires people to be patient and plan somewhat.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you could draw a line. I mean, chess has had such an influence on all modern games of like modern Western games, you know, and I don't think you could really talk about modern gaming without talking about chess, even though, you know, if chess, I mean, a common thing that people talk about is like if chess was released today, it would be super unpopular, you know.
Yeah. Well, the other answer about favorite games that you're playing or that you're addicted to, they think that's a smart-ass answer, but it's not, and it comes from me thinking of games in a broader term. It's football.
Oh yeah.
And it's because, okay, if a lot of like up and coming designers or people that want to get into video games, it's like I'll tell them, don't just play video games. You know, watch movies, play. You know, understand that, gee, a sport is a game, and there's a lot of strategy involved in different sports. Learn that. Learn some board game. Play some board games. Get well-rounded. Put as many tools as you can put into your tool bag as possible.
Yeah.
You never know when you might need that tool. You know.
Yeah.
Play poker. There's now you're going to learn about poker isn't just about getting a good hand. It's about reading people
And probability and like a lot of things.
It's probability. So learn a lot of these games.
Well, so we're here in Arlington. Are you a Cowboys fan?
Well, okay. If I said
Again, we're putting him on the spot.
Which is more controversial? These are the
if
chess
I said
questions.
it loud here, they're allowed to carry guns, concealed guns in Texas.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Okay. Growing up in Indiana, 2.5 hour drive to Chicago. It's you were a Bears fan, and either Cubs or White Sox and Bulls. And so then I moved to Chicago and lived there for like 20 years.
Right.
And so,
Right. So you're
it was
a Chicago lifer.
Yeah, so I still, right.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
Okay, cool.
I
Good.
still I still like the Cubs, the Bears, and the Bulls, even during the painful times.
Great.
But it doesn't mean I hate the Cowboys. It's like, I'm going to support, and I like to watch the local team also. But
Right. Cool.
Wow.
One observation that Nick and I had when we were talking was we feel like our careers versus your career, like we've taken the exact opposite trajectory. Like we started doing a lot of like mobile games and casual games and things like that, and went to the arcade. And you obviously started in the arcade, and now I know you're doing a lot of mobile games and I think you were there like with some of the earliest mobile games, even, right? Like,
yeah,
and still in that space. It's just interesting that it's like everybody you're always looking for something different. It's interesting to try new things and
and a lot of times when I play games for fun, I'll pick up a match 3 game.
Yeah.
Because I have shorter snippets of time. You know, I want to play something. Yeah, I don't want to play something that's going to take a long period of time, but yet I feel some gratification or accomplishment, or I'll play some puzzle games. I'll even play some word games, sure, and have fun. and have fun.
Are you a
doing
Wordle
that.
fan?
No, but I probably would do that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
fun.
Good. It's good.
It's like a little thing that you do once a day, and it's just like short and quick, and like,
Yeah.
okay, it's done, and like it's so much fun. When you get it on like 2 tries or whatever, it's like a lot of fun.
Well, I know your wife is a word person. You
Oh.
should play it with her because it's good to like challenge each other.
Yeah, she comes from. Yeah. She's a writer, and and she like knows every word in the dictionary, and it's like I'm not gonna ever play Scrabble with Dawn.
Yeah.
And her mom was like the district superintendent in Kansas of librarians.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
So it's like,
But
tip to John: do not ever play wife.
but that's the
word
thing.
games.
Wordle, it's all very common words. It's
Yes.
more of a
Yeah.
game of deduction than encyclopedic knowledge of
Yeah, so
So
you might be
words.
better at it than you think.
Yeah.
Well, it's the I like the puzzle of it, and it's like there's Wordscapes is a crossword puzzle type game. I played that for a while, and I don't even like crossword puzzles, but
Yeah.
there's enough of a puzzle there that I can do it, and I'm not spending a lot of time, and it's
Okay.
like, yeah, you can do 1 or 2 of these a day, and it's and then
Cool.
do another game that you might want to get more invested in.
Cool. All right, I'll have to check that one. That's a mobile game?
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Cool.
there's a lot of knockoffs of it. So like if you
And-
look up Word Game or Wordscape or whatever like that, you'll get a bunch of hits.
Okay.
They're all pretty much the same.
It is interesting that a lot of the people who worked on arcade are now working in the mobile space. Like I was talking to Owen Rubin, and he was saying something similar, and I think that there's that kind of short length of time that you're going to play, right? Like, okay, if you're Tracy or Lonnie and you're playing for 20 hours on Joust, that's an anomaly, right? Like most people, they come to the arcade, they play something, and like they're probably not really that great at it, and the time that they play the game is pretty short, right? Or if it's a game like, let's say, Killer Queen or Street Fighter, there's like a built-in time limit, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that's part of what appeals to me about arcade games is that they are short, they are quick to learn, and like they're simple, and yet if you really want to dig, there's usually a lot of meat there, and I don't know, I just kind of wanted to get your take on that and like how you feel about like your work in mobile in that, like does that make sense, like what I'm trying to kind of express very poorly?
I'm not sure, but I know that what's kind of gotten out of hand with mobile is that some of them are really deep now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so that kind of defeated the purpose to me of. Well, I was playing mobile games just because I wanted to play something casual.
Right.
Not have it take so long, play a few rounds, be done, and still see my family. But now that there's. Yeah, so now they've got games.
They've gotten very complicated
They've
too.
gotten complicated that last a long time. That if you want to get really good at it, now you've got to learn the, really in-depth stuff. And it's like, well, and they're doing more and more social things. And it's like, okay, well.
But they're almost like antisocial in a way, right?
Yeah. And if you want to play a social thing, then my competitive nature comes out, and that's like I want to win.
Right.
And now I want to learn whatever it takes for me to learn to win.
Speaking of,
Yeah.
I have to ask you this: do you play Clash Royale? Because
No,
I got so addicted to that I had to stop.
Okay. You hit the bingo. I started playing it, and I went. I'm gonna end up playing this. I'm gonna end up being hooked.
Yeah,
on
I found
this.
myself at 4 in the morning playing some guy in China, and I'm
Correct.
just like, okay, I have to sleep, and I can't sleep because I'm playing this stupid game, and I can't stop playing this game, you know.
Yeah. I know what you mean. So.
How are we doing on time?
We got about 15 more minutes till the Joust tournament starts, which I'm playing in.
Oh, right. I guess we're
You're
playing. I
in,
think so,
and
yeah.
I believe that the winner gets to play you, right, John? Is that the deal? Or they get to play Lonnie?
Dude,
I don't know
there is no chance we're going to win, okay? Like,
I don't know if you call it. I don't know how to comment on that. It's like I'm going to get slaughtered. It's like So a couple of years ago, I played Lonnie, and I got him on a sucker punch once, But the rest of it was
Like one kill?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, but I was dead meat otherwise.
Yeah.
But
Well, Lonnie's the
but
ref,
I'm- but
so
I'm gonna love. But
we're safe from him at least.
yeah, we are. But look, I mean, Tracy is just going to
Tracy's
annihilate
my
us.
pick.
well, yeah. So
That isn't, that is a strange
it's
thing, right?
But it's exciting to have people participate in the tournament. It's just that, okay, the chance to play me. It's like, well, I hope you're not disappointed because you're going to slaughter me. And it's not that I don't want to. I'm really competitive. I mean, I'm competitive by nature. I like to win.
Right.
But I don't have the skills anymore. I'm not practicing that game like when
It's
I
true,
was
and
doing
it's
it.
a different, like the player brain, like a good player, right? A really good player has like a totally different kind of brain chemistry than what it takes to actually create games. And like people often ask me, it's like, well, is that unfair? You created the game and you're going to play in this tournament or whatever. I'm like, please,
No.
I am a liability, not an asset. And like, and I always say, like, well, do you think that the creator of basketball could beat, Michael Jordan in a one-on-one? Because I don't think so.
Right.
And like,
Right.
and then they get it.
And then if you play a long time, they also have there's muscle memory.
Yeah.
Right.
So
How were you at Joust like when it first came out?
just before it came out, I could get scores of like 750,000 or something
Okay.
like that, but
So that's a very respectable score, right?
but I never broke 1 million.
Okay.
And that's where I was playing it a lot and in detail. But I can't even come. I mean, if I get 100,000, I would be ecstatic. I
Yeah.
can't. I don't have the skills anymore. You've got to
Right.
practice it
Right.
to do that. And then you also get the cadence of when do the various buzzards come out and when the ledges are moving. I don't have any of that memory, and
Right.
that stuff was like just
Sure.
emblazoned in me that I knew when all that stuff happened, and I knew where to position myself for this and that level.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know any of that anymore. I don't know.
I mean, I used to be so good at Spy Hunter, I could literally play for hours at a time.
Uh-huh.
And now it's like I get on it and I'm like, I suck because I don't remember any of them. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Like I used to know, like, okay, the big like Monstermobile is gonna come out at this spot and like whatever and blah blah blah. And I had like this complete image in my head of the game and where everything was gonna be at any given moment, and like all of that's just gone now. All I have is like the muscle memory of driving, but that's it, and that's not even that great.
So John, one thing I wanted to ask you about that that I've always found intriguing about Joust is that it's a little bit ambiguous whether it's competitive or cooperative. And so I don't know. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it was sort of an experiment, and I wish I had more time to have worked on it, to have done more of it. And it's like was absolutely ecstatic to hear about Killer Queen, where you guys were exploring the whole social and the multiplayer and you know, I find what you guys are doing to be really exciting, because when I did that, it was like I know that this is the right path. This is something that should be done, but it didn't get a chance to really explore it, and that was kind of frustrating. I always felt, well, the win-win for the company, the business and fun. I always thought that the cutthroat, you know, fighting someone else, but I didn't. But that was kind of hard because people were also conscious of the, you know, of a quarter, you know.
Oh, right.
So that's where that got expanded more in the '90s when they were trying that where I did the real experiment was on high impact football, where it was football. Now you can it's a lot easier to convince someone to play as teams or against each other in a sport game than.
I mean,
that really came years later.
That was a big part of our design philosophy when we were working on Killer Queen, was that we wanted to make sure that everybody felt like they could do something in the game, you know? Like,
yeah.
And I think that actually helped, because they're like, you know, like you walk up to a Street Fighter, right? And it's like, it's a little intimidating, you know? You're out there by yourself, and you don't know who's going to be playing against you, and they could be really good and whatever. It's like, if you're with a team, and like, even if you could do like just a little bit to help your team, like it kind of eases you into it a little bit more, I think.
Well, that's what I'm sorry, I should be asking more questions to you guys, but the whole aspect in your game that's really intriguing was that you're exploring different ways to win, and there's different things for people to do, and then you've got the snail, and there's different personality types or different teams will say, okay, you do this and you do, and so like everyone can be it's a little different. There's different things. There's legitimately different things to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fascinating.
It's a little bit of, it's an asset, and it's also a little bit of a liability, because it makes it a lot harder to explain the game, right? Like,
yeah, of course, and but
it is what it is, you know. I wouldn't have done it any other way, but it does make it a lot harder when you know, Joe Jack Daniels comes into the arcade and, like, you know, it's like, what the hell is this, you know, whatever, because they don't get, like, there's complexity to it, you know. And like, compared to something like League of Legends, it's incredibly simple, but you know, for an arcade game, it is a little bit, it does demand more of a player than, you know, and that's hard, you know. It definitely kills your quarter counts on some people.
Yeah, it does, but I don't know. I just got to say hats off to you for
Thank you, John.
I just go, okay, then let it be a little harder to explain. Because I think that you did the right thing, and then exploring the different ways to play it. I think that, you know, where do you go next? What's your next project? You've got so much information now of what's what's working well. What else would you want to add? What, you know, I think that was, you made a great decision to do, to add that variety, and I think it's a huge part of the appeal, and it's really interesting.
I think that largely was able to come about because we didn't approach it as a commercial game. Like if we had initially said, okay, this has got to make money in the arcade, that wouldn't have tested well. It is like Nick said, it's a little too complicated for an arcade game for what it should be, and it works obviously for whatever reason, but that's I think because we got lucky and because like we weren't aiming for that, you know, and it works financially despite that fact, you know, in one sense, it's an accident and a lot of luck, I think. You know?
Yeah,
but also,
it was definitely a lot of luck too.
Like a lot of the influence there came from looking at like European board games and like how a lot of those will have like several different ways to win. I mean, usually, and the difference there is most of those like there's different paths you can go, but they all just yield points.
Yeah,
and you win. There's still only one victory condition, which is have the most points, right? So but we wanted something that we didn't want to have points or something like that. We wanted more explicit conditions. That's kind of.
But it kind of does the same thing, even though everything gets reduced down to points. Like which strategy you take definitely takes you on a certain path, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of relates back to what you were saying, which is. Don't just, if you're like a designer or want to be a designer or whatever, don't just do one thing like, oh, I want to design fighting games, so I'm only going to look at fighting games. Yeah. Like, look at a lot of different things, you know, and try to explore. Even in games, there's just so many different types of games. Like, you should be, I understand you're not going to love every kind of game, but you should be exploring it at the very least.
Yeah.
We got an interesting comment from on the chat about this from Quadgio, saying, "I think the different roles and win conditions in Killer Queen lowers the barrier for entry, makes it easier to start playing without feeling like you're going to ruin someone else's fun," which I think is a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of which, so we're about to wrap up. So if anybody in the chat has a question for John or a comment for John. This is your last chance. We'd love to hear from you. Just type it in the chat. But so I guess, yeah, given they're about to start the tournament, any parting words, John, that you want to share or anything you want to bring up or plug?
Not really. All I can... This whole 40th anniversary thing is, I'm just tickled, and it's flattering, and like I've been saying, it's really attributable to the fans that have hung with it and were willing to keep. We're trying the old games, and the people that are babying the games, and then. A personal pleasure is meeting you guys.
Likewise, and for sure.
And so I'm tickled at that opportunity because I've watched YouTube videos. I've seen the games played a few times, and I've heard people talking about it, and to be able to meet the masterminds behind it, and.
I mean, it's funny because cool when I think about like your generation of game designers, I think like, God, these guys were geniuses. You know, like it's just like it's mind-boggling because you started from nothing, you know, and like or almost nothing. Like if you look at our game, right? Like we got to play Warcraft and StarCraft, and like we got and Joust and like all these games that like. Influenced us or whatever, whereas you guys really started from almost nothing, and that is really incredible to me.
But on one positive note, it's very liberating.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can see that too.
Yeah.
The people that made the mistake, in my opinion, were the ones that didn't see it liberating, and so those are the ones that kept making clones of Pac-Man.
Oh, God.
My God, you've got
You can do anything.
you can. Okay. So I know that freedom of being able to do anything can be very scary, but you're also going, my God, that's liberating. I can do anything. I can do a lot. So just start making lists and go, okay,
Right.
this could be fun. This could be fun. Let's try this. You know. So
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I know you're. So we all went out to dinner last night, and you know, I noticed that your kids were there and like got to talk to them and everything, and that was a lot of fun. And it was really fun to see them see you in kind of a different light in a way, right? Like,
yeah, because I'm a major introvert, and so seeing their dad talk was like shocking to them.
Huh.
So I think that caught them off guard.
wow.
Right there.
They're lovely, by the way. Really amazing kids.
Thank you.